Hi, welcome to JWest Engineering. Today I'm going to be demonstrating the installation of the Headlight Relay Kit for the 74 to 89 G Series 911. In today's video, I'll be first describing why you want this Headlight Relay Kit and what it does for your car. Then I'll be actually doing the installation. And after the installation is complete, I'll come back around and discuss some of the other circuits that might interface with the Headlight Relay Kit that you need to know about, such as the fog lights and some extra options that were for certain countries in the later cars. And I'll talk specifically about what to do about those extra wires in the headlight circuit. The Headlight Relay comes complete, all assembled, the wires terminated, ready to install. Relays are installed in the relay base, and it has a mounting bracket that's been installed, ready to go into the car. It also comes with an instruction sheet with detailed text instructions and photographs to make the installation simple. Not too many tools are needed to do this installation. You need a Phillips screwdriver for the fuse box screw. You need a straight slot, about a 3/16 straight slot screwdriver for the fuse box itself. A 1/8 screwdriver for the small connecting terminals, and 13mm and 10mm wrench are typically needed. Of course, you might want a ratchet and a socket in some of the places, but I'm going to keep this as simple as possible for the demo today. So the first thing we want to talk about is why you want to install the Headlight Relay Kit in your car. So the primary reason for installing the Headlight Relay Kit is to shorten the wiring, the amount of wire there is that it takes for the power to get from the battery to the headlights. The other thing it does that's really necessary for the 911 is taking the current draw, reducing that on the column switch. So the turn signal switch that you use to switch between low and high beams has very delicate contacts in it. And over time, those get worn out from the high current traveling through it. The total current of the headlights runs through that switch, and we've found that ruins those contacts. And so that relatively expensive switch has to be replaced when it gets worn out. Sometimes the contacts can be rebent to start it working again, but really it's better to avoid the problem in the first place. So let me describe for you the path the wiring takes from the factory so you can see how much we're going to make a change there. So on the battery terminal, on the positive battery terminal, we have these smaller red wires. Those run to the ignition switch. From the ignition switch to the headlight switch in the dash. From the headlight switch, there's a power wire that runs to that column switch that I already talked about. From there, it splits into two wires, one for the low beam, one for the high beam. Those come back and feed into a set of fuses and the fuse box here. And so all of that wiring is going to be changed out for this short red wire right here, and then our feed wires going into the back into the fuses right here. So you go from all that back and forth and around and through all those different contacts and replace it with this short length of wire. So that's the big gain there. Instead of powering the big elements in the headlights with that switch in there, all it is going to do is run through these wires here. The original wires coming from the headlight switch will hook into this harness, and then they'll just be powering the small coils, the relay coils, to switch the circuit on and off. So that is the reason for wanting to install the Headlight Relay Kit. It's not necessarily an addition of more capacity to the system. We are limited by the size of the wires that go out to the headlights, but it allows you to get the most from what you've got there. So now we'll get into the actual installation of the Headlight Relay Kit. So the Headlight Relay Kit comes complete, ready to install, has the wires are all complete and terminated, relays installed in a relay base, and a bracket installed, ready to mount into the car. It also comes with an instruction sheet with detailed instructions and photographs to help you along do the installation. Not very many tools are needed for this installation. We have a Phillips screwdriver that's needed for the fuse under the fuse box. We need a small 3/16 straight slot screwdriver for the fuse box terminals. We need a small 1/8 straight slot for the connecting terminals. And we need a 13mm wrench and a 10mm wrench for the battery terminals and ground. So the first thing we need to do whenever we work on electrical is disconnect the battery. So using a 13mm wrench, we always disconnect the ground side first, the negative battery cable. If you were to put a wrench on the positive terminal and accidentally slip and touch it to the body, you've just created a massive short, and you're going to have a shower of sparks and possibly worse. So that's why we always disconnect the negative battery terminal first. So go ahead and loosen this up. Get that clamp loose, rotate it a bit to pop it off. And what I like to do is save one of these caps that you get sometimes when you get a new battery and pop it on there. That way if you have a terminal that's a little cantankerous and wants to pop back in its position that it was in, it won't cause a problem in the middle of while you're working. Okay, now that we've got that disconnected, we're going to remove the fuse box cover. It's got a couple of clips right under here. You pull it out and then rotate it up, pull it out of the way. So now we can see the fuses. And so talking about fuse numbering, this can be a little confusing. Even if we look at the numbers inside this cover right here. So what they do is they number them by the fuse boxes. We actually have 3 fuse boxes here in this strip of 21 fuses. There's a small fuse box containing 3 fuses here. Then there's a second fuse box that goes up to this split right here with 10 fuses. And then finally the front one, which is the lighting fuse box, has 8 fuses. But even Porsche couldn't decide how to number these. Over the years they've changed how they place the numbers. The factory manual for this particular car, which is 81 SC, actually goes through with a current flow type of diagram they used during the 70s and 80s. And they've numbered them starting from 1 to 21 in those diagrams. The early cars where they had kind of the pictorial view of the fuse box on the diagrams, they numbered them by the individual fuse box. And then when the Carrera came out, the 84 to 89 diagrams, factory manual, went with the numbering that's on this cover again, where they number them by the fuse box. And actually it's very confusing because they've flipped the fuse boxes upside down in those diagrams. So they're really hard to follow until you get used to it. But what I'm going to do is go with the like the current flow diagrams in the factory manual for those middle year cars, and it's the easiest to understand when trying to give you directions. So I'm going to start at the front with the number 1, and we're going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, 7, and 8. And it's these 5 and 6 and 7 and 8 that are our headlight fuses that we're concerned about. Just so you know, I can go through it really quick. The first one is fog lights. This car doesn't have fog lights, so there's no wires in it. The next 3 are the parking lights. So you've got the license plate light on the first one, and then you've got right parking lights and left parking lights. They're divided up because some European countries, I say European, I don't know. Other countries around the world, not the US, use parking lights when the ignition is off, left and right side of the car. And so they're separate circuits, left and right. And then the headlights come next. And so we've got the low beams, and it's right and then left, and then high beam, right and then left. pretty much standard for the German is the yellow for the low beams and white or blue colors for the high beams. So we can see that fairly obvious right there. This car is a very, very simple one. It's got very basic connections without any fog lights or anything else. So it's a very simple one to demonstrate on. So I'm going to show you right here, I've got an extra fuse box, what the back side looks like. So this is the 8 fuses. The 4 headlight fuses are shown right here. And if I turn this around, you can see that the input side, they're connected together. And so it really doesn't matter which ones you use on these top 2 for both the high beam and the low beam, because they're connected together, but they split out below. They're all separated. So you have 4 different fuses for your 4 different headlight elements, 2 high beams and 2 low beams. So let's go ahead and get started with the installation. First thing we'll do is remove the screw that holds the fuse box right here. That's where we're going to be mounting the relay set. But we're going to take it out right now, get it out of the way, so that we have a little room to pull the fuse box up and away, because we're going to feed these wires up and back. So we'll start with the bigger one because it's a little bit harder. And we're going to put our hand in there. We have this harness that comes along here, runs along the back. We want to create a little bit of space and then run this wire harness up through. And so you got to go around the metal tab that's kind of in the way. Down below, it's on the metal bracket. And push this thing up. And you can look down through this slot right here and see it pretty easily. It's really not that hard. Doing it on video, of course, everything's going to go wrong and it's going to take me a lot longer. As soon as I shut off the video, I could do it in about half a second. But there you go. And then following that, we'll run the 2 blue and green wires in the same spot. So run those guys up there also, and they pop out. And so without the relay mounted yet, we can pull this up and get lots and lots of slack. Then we take our screwdriver and undo. First we'll do the low beam wire. You can do these one at a time or together. Then we'll do the high beam wire. And I'm going to go ahead and connect up the low and the high first to the fuses. And so we go green. Green kind of goes with, is more in the family of the yellow. So we use that for the low beam wire. And we'll tighten that down. Make sure you're tightening on the end of the wire itself and not on the insulation. And follow with the blue. And screw that down. And then we take our feed wires, the yellow and the white, and just match up those colors. So push the white one in there. These are a little bit of a tight fit with the crimped on ends. If you have one that's really mangled, you may have to squeeze it with a set of pliers or crimpers, or if somebody's really destroyed it, made a mess of it, you can always cut the end off and strip the end of the wire. But we'll go ahead and these went in there just fine, and tighten those down. And then you can tuck this on back in there, make it nice and neat, as much as you'd like to tuck it back, but it will be under the cover, of course. Then we take the relay set, put the screw in there, trying to stay out of the view of the way of the camera so you can see. So it makes it hard for me to see, but you'll screw this back into its mounting point. So there we go, all done with the mounting. Now we just need power. So we've got the brown wire here is the grounding wire for the relays. So the wiring that used to power the headlights now provides the power to switch the relays on and off, but it needs a ground side of the coils for the relays. And so that's what this wire is for. You can either run it out and along this side to the grounding post that's over here, or you can run it forward along this harness here and connect it up to this ground post where the negative battery cable is going. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and loosen this nut up under here. Take the nut off. Make sure none of the other wires come off while you're putting the new ground wire on. Put the nut back in place, tighten that up. So tighten that down with the wrench. Of course, as I mentioned before, socket and the ratchet will be okay. Get that tightened. And now we'll do the positive. Again, make sure that the negative terminal's off. Undo the positive terminal. Lift it off battery. Now, this is the original positive battery terminal. I've seen many cars with this gone and a replacement terminal on. So this one has this small 6mm stud. Use a 10mm wrench to change out the nut. But like I said, I've seen a lot of them that use just this either 8mm nut, the 8mm stud with a 13mm wrench, or even a 1/2 inch replacement cable. And so I've supplied the relay kit with the 8mm hole. So it might seem a little big for this small stud if you still do have this factory terminal, but we'll just put it underneath the other wires, sandwich it in there. I think that's a better solution than asking some owners to try to drill out a terminal. So that's not a very good solution. Just put that wire in there, tighten it down. Install a positive cable, tighten down that clamp. We'll put the cover back on the fuse box. And install the negative terminal. Tighten that down, and the installation is complete. Okay, so the final thing I'm going to discuss is the extra wires that you may find when you're doing this installation. And so I've got a separate fuse panel from a different car shown here, a mock-up basically, to kind of get in a little closer, and I've had it angled up so you can see it a little better. So the most common thing you're going to encounter in the 4 fuses that we care about, the 5, 6, 7, 8 headlight fuses. The first one is going to be this gray wire right here. You may see it here. You may see it anywhere on the low beams, maybe on the bottom of fuse number 6. This one is in the top of fuse number 5. That's how it was in this car that this was cut out of. And what this wire does, is the solid gray wire, is controls the fog light circuit. So these are the low beam headlight fuses. And so what it does is feeds power to the fog light circuit only when the low beams are on. Now, that's not going to be affected at all by the installation of the relay. It's still going to go out to the fog light circuit, but this might be an opportunity for you to change that. On US market cars, this was common. Other areas that the cars were delivered to had it configured different ways, and probably the most popular change would be to connect that to key power, so that whenever the key is on, the fog lights will come on and off with the fog light switch and won't be attached to the headlight circuit. And so my suggestion there is to move that to fuse number 11. Would be the preferred fuse, to move that gray wire. Probably have to disconnect it and make an extension, but come over and attach it to fuse number 11. The next one you may encounter is down on the bottom here. You've got the white and blue that goes to the dash light. So in the tachometer, the blue light that lights up when the high beams are on. And then you may find either on this same fuse or next to it, usually on the output side, would be, and this is on the later cars, a white with brown stripe wire. And so that white and brown stripe wire, the circuit's a little different on that one. It actually prevents the fog lights from being on when the high beams are on. And the way that does that is that it grounds through the high beam circuit when parking lights or low beams are on. It actually finds its ground through the high beam bulb element for the relay. And then when the high beams are on, there's 12 volts, positive 12 volts on that white brown wire. And so it's positive 12 volts on both sides of the fog light relay coil, which is a 0 volt difference. So the fog lights go out when the high beams are on. This relay kit does not affect that or change anything, but again, it's an opportunity for you to make a change if you wanted to. If you want to disable that functionality, so the fog lights will be on whenever the switch is turned on, at least the control part by that wire, you can take that wire off, white with the brown, and ground it. The other thing you may need to do is, if you've installed LED headlights, that circuit will not be working at all because the current can't flow through the headlight bulb anymore with the LED. And so in order to get your fog lights to work in any position, you're going to need to ground that wire. So the last set of wires that you need to be concerned about, and the others that I just talked about did not affect the headlight circuit directly and the installation of the headlight relays, but the set I'm about to talk about does affect it. You have to choose the right wires, and that is on the later cars, the 87 to 89 911s that were destined for the Swedish market, and those cars may have ended up in many other markets. You know, there's gray market cars, and cars move around, so you never know where you're going to find this feature. But it was originally for Sweden to have a low power headlight, a dimmed headlight feature when the parking lights were on. So the parking lights would basically be brighter because they had a dim headlight lit when the headlight switch was pulled out to the first position, just parking lights. And so what you'll find is on the the low beam wire, the 2 fuses, there'll be 2 wires. The original one here was yellow. We've changed it out for the green when we installed the headlight relay, but you'll have 2 yellow wires. One will be yellow with a black stripe, and that's the dim headlight input. And then you have the plain yellow one. And then over on the high beams, you'll have 2 white wires. One will be a little bit smaller, and that's a control wire for that dimmed headlight circuit. And then you'll have the larger white wire. That's the main input for the headlight relay. And so what you're probably going to want to do, just to make sure everything is correct, is to test those wires. So the best thing to do is to shut everything off and disconnect one of the wires, put some tape over it, and then cycle through each of those wires to confirm which one controls that dimmed headlight circuit. So when you disconnect that wire, the dimmed headlight circuit no longer works, and which one controls the main headlights. And you'll use the 2 that are the main headlight wires to connect to the new fog light circuit, and the other 2 that were for the dim can stay where they were in the fuse box and just maintain that feature. It'll continue to work without any changes once the headlight relay is in. But you just need to know which ones are the proper ones to hook to the headlight the new headlight relay circuit and replace with the green and the blue. And so hopefully that's everything you need to make the installation of the headlight relay kit super simple. And thanks for watching. Check out our other videos and be sure to check out our other products on jwestengineering.com. Thank you.